Welcome to Anti-Agin Insights, where age is a state of mind and aging is a treatable condition. And now, here is your host, Dr. Teri Fisher.
We are chatting about men versus women today, males versus females, and the facial features that we take into account when doing treatments for aesthetics. This episode really has come from a number of questions that I get from patients when they are wondering, how do we approach their particular face to ensure that they either maintain the feminine look of the face or sometimes enhance the feminine look of the face? And conversely, it also comes from male patients who are looking to get advice on how can they make themselves maintain or look more masculine with the treatments that we do. And so I thought this would be an interesting episode to talk about, first of all, some of the differences between men and women when it comes to facial aesthetics, and then also talk about some of the ways that we can approach these treatments when it comes to having a person look more masculine or feminine as they wish to do so. So let's get into this. We're going to talk a little bit first about some generalizations about men versus women in terms of their faces. So if we talk about some of the basics and we start with the anatomy, there are several differences in the two sexes, both in terms of bone structure and soft tissue. As a generalization, men tend to have a more prominent forehead bone, which creates a more angular look of the brow. Men tend to have a more angular jawline and tend to have a more pronounced chin compared to women. Now, this is due to higher levels of testosterone, which promotes the bone growth, and of course, facial hair development, which can also then bring out some of these features. On the other hand, women tend to have a more rounded forehead, a smaller nose, fuller lips. Their faces tend to be softer and more rounded with less angular features. And the underlying bone structure is what contributes to some of these differences in the facial aesthetics. Now, another thing to consider is the perception of beauty in men and women in different cultures and different societies, because those views shape our perception of what is considered, in quotes, beautiful in men and women. For example, in Western societies, again, a generalization, but masculine features like a strong jawline and a prominent brow are often seen as desirable in men, while for women, high cheekbones, full lips are often considered attractive. However, there are other cultures where the perception of beauty is quite different. In some Asian cultures, for example, a smaller, more delicate face is often seen as more attractive in both men and women. And our perception of beauty has changed over the times. If you think back to the 1920s, for example, women with a more sort of boyish figure and short hair were seen as beautiful, while in the 1950s, a more curvaceous feminine figure was more in fashion when it comes to the idea of beauty. Now, where it gets very interesting is that wherever we are in this pendulum of the way beauty is perceived, there are things that we can do through facial aesthetic procedures to help enhance and improve the natural beauty of both men and women. And the approach and the techniques that you can use differ depending on what you're starting with, the bony structure, the soft tissues, and where you want to go with this. What journey are you taking this person on, and what is their ultimate end goal? And we'll talk a little bit about some of these specific procedures and treatments that you can have in just a few moments. What I thought we would do now is talk about some of the specific differences between men and women when it comes to different areas of the face. And then we can talk about some of the treatments for those different areas. So if we essentially work our way from top to bottom in the face, what we first notice, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is that the brow ridge in a man is more prominent than that of a woman. So that means that men generally tend to have a stronger forehead, higher, broader, and more protruded due to the shape of that frontal bone. A receding hairline in a man can also show a more masculine face because it causes the forehead to look even higher. However, when you compare that to a woman, a softer brow ridge, or in some cases, the absence of a ridge in a woman, gives the forehead a more rounder and smoother appearance. And this is often considered to be one of the features that makes a face more feminine. What about the eyes? Again, we're talking in generalizations, and that's going to be a key theme here of this podcast episode. Men tend to have smaller, deeper set eyes than a woman, and the longer distance between women's eyes and their eyebrows causes a female's eyes to look larger and more open. Women's eyebrows tend to be narrower and more arched, making them appear even higher and helping their eyes to look bigger. Whereas men tend to have more straighter eyebrows and they tend to accentuate the deeper position of the eyes. This is one of the reasons why an eyebrow lift is often a very popular treatment for a woman who wants to accentuate the look of that eyebrow. And that is one of the treatments that we can do when it comes to neuromodulators or Botox. And that is also one of the things that I like to ask about at a clinic when I'm doing a Botox treatment for someone is if they want a little bit of a brow lift. And, by and large, it's usually the women that are more interested in that type of treatment as compared to a man. Now, what about a nose? So your nose, my nose, everyone's nose is right in the middle of our face. So it's one of the most prominent facial features. And the differences in the nose size and shape can lead to substantial differences in the overall look of the face. Male noses tend to be larger with a wider base, wider nostrils, and a wider bridge. Straighter or higher nasal bridge is often considered more masculine, whereas a female nose is usually smaller and has a curved bridge. And oftentimes women's noses tend to turn upward at the tip, building a little bit of a bigger nasolabial angle, which is the angle between the nose and the lips. For this reason, patients often have nose treatments with filler to soften or to slightly change the shape of the nose. What about cheeks and cheekbones? This is a very, very important aspect of facial features when it comes to masculine versus feminine look of the face. So when you look at the cheeks of the male and a female, you will often see that a feminine cheek looks rounder, softer, and more full, and also more prominent than a male. A male cheek tends to be flatter and not as full or protruded as a woman's cheek. And this is one of the key features that we look at when looking at the overall face and the facial balancing. Generally speaking, a female has what's known as a heart-shaped face. And that's this fullness in the cheeks, which would be the two upper portions of the shape of a heart. And then it comes down in an angle to more of a pointy chin at the bottom of the face. Whereas a man is going to have a little bit more of a squared off jaw and chin, and it's not going to be quite as prominent at the bottom of the chin where the point would be in a heart-shaped face. We've all heard the terms of a chiseled outline of a masculine square jaw. Well, that's exactly the type of look that a lot of men are going for when they come in for a facial treatment. One of the key differences when it comes to the chin also is the width of the chin. So if you look at the width of a male chin, of a masculine chin, it is often about as wide as the width of the mouth. If you look at the width of a female's chin or a more feminine chin, the most pointy part of the chin is about the width of the nose. So that's quite a bit more narrow. And that is one of the things that leads to that heart-shaped face. What about the lips themselves? Well, lips are extremely expressive facial features. They're very, very important, and they carry a lot of emphasis on all of our faces. Women tend to have more fuller lips than men, and men tend to have narrower lips that are more flat and less pronounced. This is a very, very popular area for women to get treated. Men can also, of course, have lip treatments, But this is a very popular treatment. And in fact, lips can be treated with either neuromodulator Botox to create a lip flip, which allows the lip to become more prominent by relaxing the muscles around the mouth. Or lips can also be treated with filler, which allows the lips themselves to have the shape change, whether it be just to increase some volume, whether it be to define a little bit more of the Cupid's bow or the vermilion border. There are a number of things that can be done with the lips. So, in summary, there are many differences between male and female anatomy when it comes to the face. The forehead on a male tends to be higher, broader, with the presence of a bony ridge. The female's forehead tends to be smaller, with a more rounded forehead. The eyebrows on a man tend to be straighter, broader, closer to the eyes. On a woman, they tend to be more arched, thinner, and further away from the eyes. The eyes themselves are deeper set on a man, whereas on a woman, they're more prominent, they're larger, and they're further away from the eyebrows, as I mentioned. The nose on a man tends to be larger and wider, whereas on a woman, it tends to be more smaller or curved. Lips tend to be narrower when it comes to a man. For a woman or a more feminine look, they tend to be fuller and larger. When it comes to the cheeks, the masculine face tends to have a less prominent and flatter cheek, while on the woman, it tends to be more protruded, more round, and more prominent. The jaw tends to be more square, more angular on a man, while on the woman, it tends to be not quite as angled, but definitely has some defined features, which then end in a more pointed chin at the bottom of the heart-shaped face for the woman. And for the man, the chin tends to be wider and more projected. So, what does this all mean when it comes to getting facial treatments? Well, all of these things need to be taken into account. I pride myself on asking patients what they want, whether my patient is a man or a woman. Some people want to look more masculine. Some people want to look more feminine. Some people want to do some work to the eyebrow. Some people want to do some work to their nose or to their chin or to their cheeks or to their jawline. And these are all things that need to be taken into account. And so I encourage you, whenever you are considering getting a treatment, whether it's filler, neuromodulator, or anything else, to ensure that you ask the appropriate questions. You have every right to ask those questions and figure out what it is that you want to do and what would be the best treatment for you based on the advice of the healthcare provider. I hope this was interesting to you and you have a little bit more knowledge in terms of what are the things that we look for when doing treatments for a masculine or feminine look, and how you can then take that knowledge and determine what you want to do for your treatments. Thank you, as always, for tuning into the podcast this week. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. If you are enjoying it, then please feel free to leave a review on your favorite podcast player. It means the world to see those reviews. And I've got some wonderful, wonderful guests coming up in the next couple of weeks on the podcast. I'm really excited about these, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share the knowledge of these guests with you as well. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Anti-Aging Insights. Stay tuned to discover more of the latest news, treatments, technologies, and developments in non-surgical cosmetic and anti-aging medicine. For more inspiration, to access the show notes, or to book an appointment with Dr. Fisher, Dr. Frame, or any of the other anti-aging professionals, please visit our website at antiagingvancouver.com. Until next time, stay inspired and live life well.